What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. We got a beautiful day today, and the combine just finished up, so we got some Steelers football to talk about.
Oh, do we ever? But before we get into the Steelers content, I do want to say, our condolences to the Russell family. As Steelers great Andy Russell passed away this weekend at 82 years old. Our condolences to him and his family. Our thoughts and prayers are with you guys. Um, So, as you said, the NFL Combine just completed. Who were you most impressed by? Just kind of get it out of the way. Out of the entire Combine that you saw, was there one player that popped off the screen for you?
Um, no, not one player. Uh, I was very excited. It was the first day of the combine, and I've been a big Braden Fisk fan,
Mm-hmm.
the defensive tackle from Florida State,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought he would do really well at all the testing, but um, he might have raised his value, his draft stock, to the point that the Steelers won't really have a shot at him in,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, the second round, which is where I was, hoping they could target him. So, but you want to see these guys, excel and do the best the best of their ability, because this is their future. And so I was very happy for him, because I do believe that he was a little bit under the radar going into the combine, but he's not anymore.
Yeah, I got you. Understood. For me, and it's kind of a position of need, so to speak, right? So that's kind of why I looked into this. I really like Jackson Powers Johnson. What he was able to do, and he threw down the offensive line coach, and then his
Yeah.
speed and his ability to move. Really reminded me of Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones did something similar to the offensive line coach when he was doing
Yeah.
his stuff there in the combine or in his pro day, one of the two. And so I thought he looked impressive. He looked a lot faster than I thought he was. Um, he looks strong. He looks like he could be a number one a first round draft pick, in my opinion. Now, does he make it to the Steelers? The Steelers take that chance, going with a center in the first round. Who knows? But I liked him. I know that Zach Frazier, your guy, got a lot of praise because he went out there and worked out and did well, even though he's been limited with his leg injury.
Hmm.
Can you talk about what you saw from him and what he was able to do? And did any of that impress you?
Oh, everything he does impresses me. Uh, just because I know I'm so familiar with him. Um, but the fact that I didn't think he would try to work out. I
Mm-hmm.
thought he would do the bench, do the interviews, and I thought he would wait to pro day to do a lot of the testing. Of course, he's going to do it again at the Big 12 pro day, but the guy doesn't pass up an opportunity to compete. And we've seen so many guys opt out this weekend because they know that, let's say Marvin Harrison Jr., if he runs a 4.54, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
he might drop down and not be considered the number one wide receiver. So these guys opt out. That concerns me because, as we know, Najee Harris was unable to test and do any running drills prior to the Steelers drafting him in the first round. I think if the Steelers would have seen his lack of a second gear, uh, running backs don't get taken in the first round anymore. They don't have that second gear, that elite speed, and Harris definitely doesn't. And I don't think the Steelers would have took him in the first round. I think they might have took Creed Humphreys in the first round, like they
Mm-hmm.
should have done, and then maybe still got Harris in the second round. So the fact that a guy didn't work out, and Harris, they said it was injury, but I think it was a little bit injury, and it was a little bit, you know, let's kind of keep things close to the vest and not let teams. There was a lot of speculation that Harris could run a 4.5, and there's no way he runs a 4.5. So
Mm-hmm.
the fact that Frazier didn't have a lot to gain this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, I mean, I'm familiar with him and I've seen him run many, many times in these kind of settings, and he was a little stiffer and he was a little not as confident on that one leg. but you
Mhm.
seen him go full speed, full bore, give everything he had, and he really tested it. So to me, that shows a guy who wants to compete. If there's an
Mhm.
opportunity to compete, he's out there doing it. That's who I want on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He interviewed great. Different. There was like 8 Pittsburgh sports beat guys there, reporters, and they said that he was delightful. They loved him, and so people are seeing what I've been saying, that he is an excellent fit for the Steelers. Now, Jackson Powers Johnson is also an excellent prospect. So in a year that the Steelers desperately need to find their next center, there's 3 guys that fit that criteria.
Mhm.
Van Braun. So, but yeah, I was very impressed with Frazier, and I'm glad that he showed that courage and that competitiveness this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that as well. I thought that him going out there and showing that meant something. I saw some news um, headlines out there that it didn't go unnoticed by a lot of scouts and
Mm-hmm. Yep.
players, personnel, and teams that he was out there fresh off the injury or probably sooner than expected to be, and he was giving it his all. The only thing that and it could be a result of the injury right now. I thought he looked a little light. He looked a little thin. Um, what do you
He
think about
was
that?
I think it was 313, and he
Hmm.
usually plays uh starting out the season he's like 318, and then he
Yeah.
loses a little bit. But if you see his physique, he is very muscular,
Right.
and he doesn't carry extra weight. Now,
Mhm.
if you look at Johnson, he's a little pudgy in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, Frazier's not, and we're talking about a 15 pounds difference
Hmm.
in weight. And I'll take the guy that's not particularly top heavy and it carries his weight in a more athletic build, because
Hmm.
he will have a longer career usually than a top heavy guy, because it puts different strain on the physique.
Yeah.
But like I said, either one of those young men would be an excellent addition to the Steelers.
Now the Steelers released Mason Cole earlier this year. The thought is, and I think from what we understand is currently right now, if the Steelers were to play a game, Herbig would be the center. Given the fact that they've released this guy, and maybe perhaps they're looking at the draft, do you think that that pick is going to come in the first round? Given the need in that area, and going into it having released your starting center before the draft.
Well, I think there's 3 options that could happen. They could conceivably take him at 20,
Mhm.
being Powers Johnson or Frazier. Um, or they could go ahead and take a tackle they really, really like and hope that Van Prawn makes it to pick 51.
Mhm.
Get another Georgia guy to put on that line, because those are your 3 top centers. Um, they could trade back. If somebody wanted to move up to 20, say from 27, 28, they could trade back, which would be optimal. Maybe get another 4th rounder out of it,
Mhm.
and take Frazier in the late first, or Johnson if he was to fall that far. But now we know that the Eagles need a center, the Dolphins need a center, the Cowboys are wanting a center, the Steelers. So there's only so many of them out there.
Mhm.
Um, or the Steelers could take one of their 4s and try to move up in the second to get one of those guys. Because you don't, I'm afraid they won't be there at 51.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense. Going that far into the draft with these guys, yeah, the film pops off. I mean, I know it's against collegiate teams, and then you see what they're able to do also in the combine. Kind of gives you an idea that these guys, have the potential to be something pretty good. And they're already meeting with other teams. In fact, uh, Jackson Powers Johnson met with the Bengals, who I believe are selecting before the Steelers. So they might miss
Yeah.
their opportunity to even get an opportunity to draft him in the first round if they go that route there. But you mentioned, moving him back into the second round. Are you thinking that the Steelers are going to go back at tackle in the first round and just go offensive lineman in the first two rounds there?
That was that would be my dream scenario. If I could pick any guy
Yeah.
in the first round, I like Fuaga
Hmm.
from Oregon State. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the combine, he did his testing. The man is huge, but he is so. Watch him on film. He's nasty, and he's a guy that run blocks all the way to the whistle, and he would bring that intensity and that physicality to right tackle that the Steelers have lacked, because that was Chuk Okorafor's weakness. It's just he wasn't mean,
Mm-hmm.
and they could not get that out of him. I always thought that this is the year, but it never happened. And then if you listen to Zach Frazier talk or Powers Johnson, they both love to run block, and we've seen on film they like to pancake guys.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that's been missing. The Steelers, since Pouncey got older, and they've not been able to fill that center position. All great Steeler offenses and have a strong offensive line, and they have that center taken care of. And I think this is the year. There's three guys that I think will be worth it that they can target in this draft, and that's what I want to see happen. But yeah, I love Fiaga. Uh, Fiontu out of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
That's another excellent tackle. He really impressed me. Guys that might be able to somehow fall within range
Mm-hmm.
that could be there. But there's actually some second round tackles, Daniel, that I think that would be an upgrade for the Steelers, and maybe be a little bit of development,
Mm-hmm.
take a little bit of time, but that had a lot of talent. There was a lot of talent at tackle there at the combine. So, um, you'd like to get that first round guy,
Mm-hmm.
especially like let's say that they can trade up in that second round, or maybe trade a guy like a Deontay Johnson to get a second or third round pick. Then you would have more picks in the first few rounds, and that would give you more options.
Yeah, but if you traded Deontay Johnson in that situation, you're leaving a huge hole there in the wide receiver room that's going to have to be filled. I mean, currently, right now, if Deontay Johnson is traded, which there are some major rumors going on, I think Mark Caboli fed fuel to the fire, so to speak, earlier on 93.7 The Fan, saying that he thinks that there's a chance that Deontay doesn't want to be in Pittsburgh anymore. He came out with some, cryptic tweets. One of them was like, something about, y'all don't know what you're talking about. And he had another one leaving that, poop emoji in the past. And then the last one was, it is what it is, with his shoulder shrug or something to that nature. So it was a very interesting amount of tweets that came out, given the rumors that were there. But the Steelers would be left with George Pickens, Calvin Austin. Allen Robinson is still on the team somehow, but I think there's some sort of I've heard some rumbling that they're trying to rework his contract.
Yeah.
But you're definitely going to have to go get somebody else, or multiple persons, to fill up that wide receiver room. Where do you start targeting the wide receiver if Deontay Johnson's not on the team anymore?
Well, the Steelers, I believe that's the plan. They talked to six. You have so many formal interviews. They talked to six wide receivers and six cornerbacks. That's more than any other position.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that speaks volumes. Deontay Johnson's the last year of his contract. He is not a good fit in this offense, Arthur Smith's offense. I know that not all my colleagues agree with that, but I do
Mm-hmm.
not think he's a good fit. He does not get yak yards. He is not physical. He's not a good blocker. Therefore, there is multiple guys in this draft, even into the third round, that fit what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
There is some free agent guys that I think you could get at a relatively reasonable price. Then you draft a guy. They're going to have to add at least two guys. I
Yeah.
would add two guys if they keep Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, I think if they keep Johnson, he's not going to be happy. He's not going to like this offense. And we see what happens in the past when he's not happy.
Mm-hmm.
So I want him to pick up two receivers regardless. If they keep Johnson or they trade Johnson. But that's why I'd like to have additional picks. Because this is a deep class of wide receivers. There was guys that I think the Steelers should consider that wasn't even at the combine.
Oh, wow.
But if you look at guys like, one thing that might really help the Steelers is Keon Coleman, the huge wide receiver from Florida State. I mean, he ran a 4.61,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody started dropping him down. He was in the top 6 projected. Now they got him down, 10 and lower. That could be great for the Steelers. Get him later.
Mhm.
But he's 6'4", 220, and he runs these routes, he doesn't slow down. He
Hmm.
gains separation through size and through, I mean, look at Puka Nacua, 4.57. Cooper Cup, 4.61 or 4.63.
Right.
Um, Guys who have great balance and footwork gain separation. How many guys really gain separation from pure foot speed and acceleration? I mean, the Tariq Hills are
Yeah.
few and far between. Most guys run a 4.5 to a 4.6. If you look at your top 10 receivers every year, that's the range. And because they have balance and they have great footwork. And Antonio Brown, I think, was close to a 4.6. But the dude could get open and he had acceleration. Uh, and he actually got better as he worked on it as a professional. So
Mhm.
all I'm saying is there's guys that are really solid fits for Arthur Smith's system, um, that I think can be had in this draft. But I'm like you, they need to double dip. They need a free agent and they need a draft pick, at least one.
No, I agree. I mean, to me, I think that the wide receiver room is currently it's okay, with Deontay Johnson there, but there is a concern, like you mentioned, with his fitment there with the Arthur Smith type of offense. And well, does Calvin Austin fit in Arthur Smith's offense to you?
I'm not counting on him as being a your traditional wide receiver.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking he's going to be again more of your punt returner, your gadget guy,
Yeah.
which Arthur Smith likes to have those guys.
Right.
But as far as your number 3 receiver, no. To me,
Yeah.
he's number 4 or number 5, preferably number 5.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because I think that Calvin Austin was supposed to be Matt Canada's guy. He was supposed to be the guy that can run the jet
Yep.
sweeps and all those other things for Canada there. Well, with him gone now, I think that I don't think that Arthur Smith was a jet sweep type of guy. I don't remember that being happening a large amount of times in his offense.
Now
Uh,
he likes to a lot of 2 tight end sets,
mhm.
2 tight ends and a fullback set. There'll be times that most of the time there'll be 2 wide receivers out
Yeah.
there, at max, and then maybe if it's passing, but they throw to the tight end a lot, in his offense. So if anything, they may need to add another tight end if they don't feel like Darnell Washington can step up and be more of a receiving threat. I think he can, but the problem is he hasn't proven it yet.
Hmm. See, I'm more concerned about Connor Hayward and his ability to block in Arthur Smith's offense, because I think that's a big component of his offense, running the ball and going in heavy, as you mentioned. And Connor Hayward, given his, I think he's what 5'11", he's a little bit smaller for a tight end. Hasn't popped off the screen as a blocking tight end. I think he's probably somebody that I would be more concerned about, maybe perhaps getting a little bit less playing time under Arthur Smith.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
more H back than fullback, and
mhm.
they were interested in some fullbacks at the East West Shrine and at the Senior Bowl, and then I think they even talked to one at the Combine. So they may be putting some fillers out there, trying to find their next fullback.
They could be. I think that. I mean, can you imagine if you had, Darnell Washington? You also have Pat Fryermuth out there with Najee Harris and a fullback. You can do a lot of things with that, and even another big receiver or tight end out there. Um, there's a lot of things you can do. You can either run it down their throat if they come in with their smalls, and if they come in big, spread them out. Each one of those guys I think can catch. So that's kind of the stuff that we had been, I guess, wanting since last year. That's one of the
Yeah,
stuff I wanted since last year
yeah.
that we didn't really get an opportunity to see. But since you mentioned tight end, you think that that's something in the cards in the draft this year, or do you think that's maybe somebody in free agency or undrafted?
I think if it was a draft, it would be a later round.
Hmm.
There's some guys that at one time people were talking about Theo Johnson for Penn State would be a really good fit. He's kind of a poor man's Pat Fairmouth, but a better blocker. But then he really did good at the combine and looked good in drills. So now his stock's going up. So again, it's it's going to kind of play how the draft falls and the pro days. But I don't see them going free agent tight end. I think that they have other needs elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they have some major needs elsewhere. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about those major needs that they are still left. And we'll probably get into the quarterback debate as well. There's some news there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on the YouTube side. We're not going anywhere. And welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. We're talking about the NFL Combine and how the players that have participated in the Combine, has that changed, our train of thought as far as what are the position and needs in the draft and in free agency. But before we get back into the conversation, Shannon, do you have any articles coming out on SteelCurtainNetwork.com that you want to share with everybody?
Actually, I do. I have. It just when I watched the combine and I seen how the 40 times are influencing player evaluations, which they always do, even more so than the. You got your game film. You already know a lot about these guys. You just want to use this testing to confirm what you're seeing on tape. Like Jarvis Jones back in the day, the linebacker the Steelers took in the first round out of Georgia. I mean, on game film, he looked great, and he had massive numbers. But then he goes to the combine, and he runs a terrible 40 time. And that should have been the red flag. Well, the Steelers, I think, have learned from that. So that's what you want to use these drills and these numbers to confirm or, make you take a second look at something ain't right. Well, I think his name is Xavier Worthy, the the wide receiver for the Texas Longhorns. He broke the combine record running a 4.21 40. I did not even have him in the top 10 at wide receiver. I consider him late second, early third at best. Now everybody's talking about him maybe going in the first round. They did this when John Ross broke the record, and he went number 10, I think it was, to the Bengals, and never did anything in the pros. And I think that somebody is going to overdraft Xavier Worthy the same way because he can run really fast in a straight line for 40 yards. Then you take a guy like Keon Coleman, like I was just talking about, who was an excellent player at college, a contested catch guy, big, strong, powerful, was being talked about being a top 6 wide receiver. He runs a 4.61, and now everybody's dropping him out of the top 10. I don't see that. See, that's where you're taking the 40 and you're making it to where it's actually worthless. Because you're raising a guy up and rewarding him. He was a decent college player, but nobody was considering him top 10. Now, and then you're taking another guy who everybody considered top 10, who doesn't have that blazing speed, but we talked about earlier, most of the top 10 receivers don't. And they're just dropping him down for that. That's the only reason. Because he did really good on the other on-field testing. So that's what the article's about. And that should be out maybe even tomorrow.
Good deal. Make sure you guys go check that out. That is going to be at SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. You can also check out all our other podcasts, our audio-only podcasts that come out. I myself have one that comes out on Friday called State of the Steelers. Don't want to miss it. It only comes out audio side only. So make sure you go check it out at SteelCurtainNetwork.com or anywhere you get your podcast. Just search up Steel Curtain Network. So back into the conversation.
Hey, one more thing, Daniel.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Well, if I hit the right one, there we go.
Yeah.
We had talked a little bit. We wanted to pay our respects to Andy Russell, who, again, was kind of the bridge guy for the Steelers from being the worst team in the NFL to being what I think was the best dynasty of all time. He was the only guy that kind of bridged that
Hmm.
because he was one of the few guys Chuck Noll kept.
Yeah.
And that just speaks volumes that when you look at that, they were a 4-3, and the linebackers were Andy Russell, Jack Lambert, and Jack Ham. Now you got two of the best to ever do it, and Andy Russell was right there with them, 7-time Pro Bowler, and he has the record for the longest and slowest fumble return that I ever saw. You have to check that out if you ain't never seen it. But everybody's talking about what an awesome gentleman he was, and what a great Steeler representative. But then also over the weekend, we lost Chris Mortensen.
Hmm.
And I was just talking about him the other day with my wife. I said, I know he was sick, but I didn't know how bad. And each time you'd see him, he was looking weaker and weaker. And I had such respect for him. He's one of the originals, those original ESPN guys that I grew up watching, and a true gentleman, a man of faith. And I definitely want to, I appreciate Jeremiah mentioning that, because I do want to send my condolences and prayers to his family.
Yeah, 100%. It is devastating news. I mean, I grew up also, listening to him. You know, uh, Me, I started liking the Steelers in the early '90s. Around the time when I could remember, and
Yep.
so I'm sure I liked them before then too. But growing up, listening to him and the crew there, I mean, that was like tradition on Sunday mornings before the games and after the games and things like that. So, rest in peace to Chris Mortensen and to Andy Russell, to both of you
Yep.
guys. All right, so back into the conversation. A couple of holes that are still left that need to be addressed. One of them is going to be the middle linebacker position. After seeing what you've seen in the combine, and knowing what you know, and probably thinking that the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe aren't going to target the middle linebacker until maybe perhaps. Oh, well, I'll ask you that. When do you think that the middle linebacker position could be targeted if it's in the draft, or do you think they're going to go free agency to fill those positions?
This is one of the positions that I really like to see him double dip,
Mm-hmm.
meaning free agent and draft. Uh, but again, you only have so many picks, so it's gonna fall. Uh, what they do leading up to the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But free agency, there's guys like Drew Tranquil, who just won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. I talked about him before last season, that he would have been a good option for the Steelers, and they went with Cole Holcomb. And then immediately after the Steelers signed Cole Holcomb, the Chiefs got Drew Tranquil.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the reason I was not as interested as Cole Holcomb is because Cole Holcomb's injury history. And then, sure enough, he got taken out, but it was by friendly fire. That could happen to anybody. But we don't know when he'll be back due to the severity of that injury. So, and we know that Quan Alexander rehabbing that Achilles, and he's a free agent. I don't expect the Steelers to pursue him right off. He might have to wait till almost the season starts before people start really offering him. So, a guy like Drew Tranquil, Dotson from the Buffalo Bills, um, Josie Jewell from the Broncos, there's some cheaper guys out there that the Steelers could get to play alongside Landon Roberts, because Roberts has got to have some help.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to see the next Steeler guy they draft be a young stud that they can build around. Now, I've been high on Peyton Wilson prior to the combine.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went to the combine at 6'4" and like 230, and he ran a 4.44. Now everybody knows who he is.
Mm-hmm.
You got Adrian Cooper, and you got um, uh, Cedric Gray, and there's, of course, you got Trotter. His dad was a former player for the Eagles. I think it's Jeremiah Trotter, if I'm, or that was his dad's name.
Yeah.
But he's from Cleveland. Cleveland. He's from Clemson. Wrong C. But there's some really top notch guys. The problem is you're going to have to get them in the second round. And what is the Steelers going to target in the second round? But I definitely believe they got to get a center and they got to get an inside linebacker because that's strength up the middle. And all the great Steelers teams have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This is an important position. I think that given the fact that there's some needs there and with the O line, the center position mainly, uh, which can be maybe a first round or a second round pick. You also have communicate talks about the tackle or even going receiver in the second round or something like that. I don't know. I think that if Devin White is available in free agency, I think the Steelers should go out there and get him. And
There's another guy. Yeah, yeah.
he's a guy that I think can really fill that void and be that all around linebacker if he can stay healthy. All around linebacker that has the coverage ability, the hits, the hitting ability, not afraid to get into, put his face in the pile, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be excited about him. There's been some news that apparently they're not talking him, and the Bucks aren't talking contract anymore. So it appears he's going to hit the free agency market come here pretty soon. So I don't know. I think that the cap has increased. The Steelers have money. They ain't paying a quarterback. Go out there and if you're going to spend some money in a position, spend it on the one that you've been missing a player for the last I don't know since 2017.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's just my opinion. I think that Devin White would look good in the black and gold. Let's bring him over.
Yeah.
And so the other position I want to talk with is the quarterback position. Now, there's been some rumors going on. Russell Wilson was released today. Is he going to be, going to the Berg? Justin Fields rumors started heating up with, I think it was Scheffner stated that there's been conversations between the Steelers and the Bears for Justin Fields. Now, here today, apparently those rumors have all been squashed. I think that's what's trending right now, that the Steelers aren't in on Justin Fields nor Russell Wilson. What that tells me is maybe there's a little bit of leeway going on with Mason Rudolph's contract. And if Mason Rudolph ends up being the guy that comes back and it's Mason Rudolph and it's Kenny Pickett, I think that the Steelers are going to end up getting a quarterback probably within the first 4 rounds. Where do you see the quarterback being addressed? And does that depend on who comes in free agency?
Yeah, I think that if they run back last year, let's say that they have Pickett and they re-sign Rudolph, I see a guy late round, a Sam Hartwell, Travis out of Florida State. I think somebody's will throw a 4th round, 5th round pick at Joe Milton because he can throw it 80 yards.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything. Jamarcus Russell could throw it farther than that, and he was awful. But people get infatuated with a 40 timer, how strong his arm is or how big his hand is. So I think that Milton will go earlier than the Steelers would even consider him. So that's why I'm saying a Sam Hartwell or a Hartman, or somebody like that, to be that third quarterback that you might get develop a little bit and maybe get lucky and find a Brock Purdy. But I don't. The way that this year is shaping up, and we're talking about all these needs the Steelers have, I just don't want to see them waste money going after a quarterback when they don't have the team to help that guy be successful. I don't want to see them waste draft capital. I would like to see them have more picks, not less picks. Right. So I think Russell Wilson is a terrible fit in Pittsburgh. I'm not interested. Not interested in Ryan Tannehill either. I like the idea of bringing back Rudolph. I think that it'll be just a powder keg for the fan base. I think that whoever's playing, if they are not doing good, you're going to have the fans chanting the other guy's name. We've seen that, and it would especially be true with those two where they do have a history together and we're familiar with them. but I don't know what the other option is right now. I really don't, because Justin Fields, his value keeps dropping. The
Hmm.
longer this goes, you're gonna get him for a fourth rounder.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because nobody's gonna give you a second and a fifth, or a second and a player. We've already seen that. If you could get him for a fourth, it makes sense just how talented he is, and see if he can fit with Arthur Smith's offense. I would do it in a heartbeat myself
Yeah.
if you could get him for a fourth. And the Steelers have too.
Hmm.
But um, I think that they want. What did we learn this weekend? Well, we've heard rumors, everything. One guy says they're going after Fields, somebody else says they're not. Somebody says Russell Wilson, and then everybody's like, no, The only thing we know is that Pickett's coming back, and Arthur Smith's talked to him, and they've already offered Mason Rudolph.
Hmm.
Ron said he told Rudolph, "We want you to be part of this, to be part of the plan."
Yeah.
So right now, that's all we got to go by. And if they're going to do that, I wish they'd do it soon, and then they can focus on which later round quarterback they might be interested in.
Yeah. I think you're right there. Um, but Justin Fields, yeah, his stock is falling quick. I think that it was reported that the Steelers and the Falcons were the two teams that were interested in him, and
And the
it's
Raiders at one time, but I think that's out the window.
yeah, and I think the Falcons are also out. I think it's been reported that they're going to go all in on Kirk Cousins. So if that ends up being the case, ain't nobody there out for him. I can see the Steelers making a move to get Justin Fields for a very late round pick or something to that similar to that. The Steelers are a team known to give former first rounders a chance, a second chance,
Yeah,
and I can see that being the situation. Um, but for the Steelers to come out and say supposedly, allegedly that they're out and those two guys, I think that just kind of told me that maybe perhaps they're getting somewhere with the Mason Rudolph talks, and I think, I mean, like again, I don't really know much about the quarterbacks that are there outside of the top guys. I know that Joe Milton, he throws 85 yards, and I don't know about the rest of him either. I
yeah,
know he had one play where he ran really well. I think I've seen some flashes because he's got the arm strength. I wouldn't mind bringing in a guy like that in the fourth round or fifth round. That's not somebody that you're expecting to be the franchise of your team in any time in the near future, but maybe perhaps has the potential if he can be coached up. Because from what I understand, in Tennessee, he really doesn't have the most NFL ready systems, and maybe perhaps getting with an NFL quarterback coach and an NFL system and working with somebody one on one. Maybe perhaps he can improve, and I can see maybe some potential there. But I don't know about the other guys, to be honest with you. I think I've heard of Hartman that you mentioned, but I haven't seen anything on him. That's just my me personally. Um,
the problem with, like, Hartman, to me, peaked 2 years ago with Wake Forest,
mhm.
and then he transferred in the portal to Notre Dame, and I was really expecting him to have a huge year, and he had an okay year.
Mhm.
Surrounded by substantially more talent than he had at Wake Forest. And but that's the thing. Some guys, they kind of flatline, and they're good as they're ever going to be.
Mhm.
You like you said, a guy like Milton, he's got all the athletic ability. Uh, could he develop into something more? Uh, but for the Steelers, I think they want a guy that can come in and like last year, everybody gets hurt. You're playing that third guy.
Mhm.
I think a guy like Travis, um, Hartman, one of them kind of guys could come in and keep the ship afloat. I don't think they're ever going to be a starter,
Right.
but they can be quality career backups. And those later rounds, that's usually what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So, but I would really like to see, um, we get all these false reports. Like, you can't even look at Facebook because they're swearing up and down that they've signed Rudolph to this contract, and it's all fake
Yeah.
accounts. So I would like to see them get that taken care of and let these guys really dive in to Arthur Smith's playbook. And again, I'm just the sooner you can get this stuff done in the off season, that gives you more time because it takes time to learn all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And especially like, for instance, this position that we're talking about now, the quarterback position. If the Steelers end up acquiring Mason Rudolph, you would want him to have that playbook a lot sooner than later.
Yes.
Especially if he's going to have a true shot at being, QB1 in that competition there. Uh, I would think so. If I was him, that's what I would want as well. I haven't. That's the other thing, though. I haven't heard any rumors about him where he might be landing outside of Pittsburgh. So,
Well, he can't say nothing about anybody else because
no,
you can
but
get him in trouble.
true. He can get in trouble, but there's rumors about the Kirk Cousins and the Justin Fields and all these other players are still, on other teams, on other teams.
But who is generating those rumors? To me, it's Scheffler, and their agents and
Yeah.
some players. Because I've
Mhm.
seen some of the players talking about, oh yeah, we'd like to have this guy here. Now they can do that, but
Mhm.
it can't be a coach. It can't be the actual player.
Right.
So yeah, I think that we've got 7 days. I
Mhm.
think to the legal tampering period, so it's close. It's
Yeah.
really close, and then we're going to start hearing who they're really talking to and who they're really interested in. I think the whole Kirk Cousins to Atlanta makes sense. And somebody said, "Well, you think Atlanta's farther along than the Steelers?" Well, they're younger. They're
Mhm.
younger.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of talent in skill position players, and they have a solid line. But they're in a really bad division, so they can compete in that division and to be a playoff contender because they're in a bad division. The Steelers can't do that. I mean, legitimately, without injuries, all 4 teams in the Steelers AFC North could have made the playoffs last year. So, but before the Steelers go and take that shot at that proven quarterback, they got to get somebody who can fill that void. They got to have the talent to surround him to make it worthwhile. So for Kirk Cousins, it makes sense now for Atlanta.
Yeah, and it's one quarterback that I was hoping that didn't come to the Pittsburgh Steelers that we can hopefully chalk off as a quarterback for another team. Um, yeah, like you said, I mean, if he's going out that direction, there's Justin Fields no, Justin Fields stock is dropping.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's interesting how this is going to end up playing out. But yeah, like I was saying, we haven't heard anybody talk about saying, "Hey, we're interested in Mason Rudolph." There's 2 teams that are interested in Mason Rudolph. None of those things. So maybe perhaps he ends up finding his way back to the Steelers sooner than later. I'm not sure if he's going to get the attention that maybe perhaps most thought he was going to get. Because with every other free agent that is possibly going to go in somewhere and be a starting quarterback, there are already those rumors. You have the
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, to Pittsburgh, to everywhere else, the Tannehill to Pittsburgh and everywhere else as well. And so, you don't hear that with Mason. So I don't think there's many teams calling him to be the starting guy, so to speak.
I think there's a lot of people assuming he's a bridge guy.
Mm-hmm.
That one of these teams is going to take one of these quarterbacks in the top 10, and they could be 4 quarterbacks go.
Mm-hmm.
That one of them is going to say, okay, we don't want to just throw him in there, and we're going to bring in a bridge guy. And Mason, people are thinking that's what he's going to be. Well, the problem is almost all these, every time they do this, look at the Colts last year. They have Gardner Minshew, and the plan is to start him out as the bridge guy and then bring in Anthony Richardson. And it a lot of times don't even make it 1 week. And they're like, we're going to throw that young kid in there and might as well let him learn to swim. And so the bridge guy really isn't as important as he used to be
Mm-hmm.
because you might only use him for 2 or 3 games. So I think that Rudolph's smart enough to know that. And I think that he realizes he's got a real opportunity in Pittsburgh. He knows he's competition. and I think he feels confident that he can win that position if given a fair shot. So hopefully that means he'll come back at a reasonable price. I mean, I ain't saying insulting
Right.
price, but a reasonable price where the Steelers have uh, needs and holes elsewhere. Because if they improve the roster, it'll only help Rudolph as well.
I think the Steelers are on the hook for a little bit over $8 million this year for Kenny Pickett. If Mason Rudolph resigns, is it for more than that?
I think it'll be close to that, somewhere in that range. Because our 10 million and
Yeah.
then different spot track or whatever was like, no, they were saying more around the 8 million range for him as a starter.
Yeah.
If he wherever he goes. So they might get him a little cheaper than 10 million a year.
That'd be good. That'd be good. I mean, I think that the lower amount that is, the less likely that another team is going to use him as the starting guy, and the Steelers will be the only option for him, and he'll be able to find his way back. And we'll see if it was a fluke those last 3 games, or if that's really who he was and who he's going to be moving forward, and or maybe Kenny Pickett beats him out. I mean, there's a possibility that Mason Rudolph was, or is as good as he was, and Kenny Pickett take another step and beats him. And if that ends up happening and being the case, that's only a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my opinion. To have two capable quarterbacks that could be, starting guys in the league. Um, the last position that I kind of wanted to talk to you about before we let everybody go is, do you think the Steelers are going to go and get another punter in the draft, or is that going to be something that's going to be an undrafted situation or a free agent?
Every time I do a mock, there's a punter that comes up in the 7th round.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'll actually make it there. Like Tory Taylor, he's Australian punter, well rounded, can kick field goals too. So, I don't. The free agent route is the way the Steelers have went about it through the years. I wanted them to go after the punt god.
Yeah, me too.
And they did not show any interest. So, there was a guy that I thought had like draftable talent that could have maybe been available, and they didn't go after him. So, but a guy like that, Tory Taylor, I don't really follow punters that much, so that's that. I know more about the place kickers than I know the punters. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
So, but I think that they'll be, even if they do draft one, they'll sign an undrafted guy too, and have some camp competition. And that may only make sense. You still got Brad Wing out there, some guys that's kicked for him in the past. So I expect we'll probably see at the start of training camp 2 or 3 punters.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But if you're saying that the Steelers go out there and draft a guy that can also kick field goals, does that mean they're going to allow Boswell to throw more? Just because,
we have to. I mean, look at it. He's 50%. He hit Villanueva for the touchdown against the Broncos, and then he got knocked goofy against the Browns. So half the time he does great.
And that play there against, when he got goofy, that should have been a what's it called? Not interference. That should have been roughing the passer. There we go. Because they hit him way late after the throw,
or at least the blow to the head.
Yeah,
because they went high. They didn't even the helmet.
Yeah, exactly. And so, if they can get a kicker that can kick some field goals as well, there's less of a risk. Let Boswell throw some more TDs.
They never did let Presley Harvard throw the ball.
No, I
know
man.
You talked about that we'd all expected that at some point, and his whole career came and went, and he never threw it one time.
Like when his draft highlight video came out, that was the first play. Like it wasn't even a punt. his most impressive play was a touchdown pass. So, it was something that I expected to see. We didn't get a chance to see it. We'll see if there's some more trick plays. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you're watching us on the YouTube side. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please hit that share, give us a 5-star rating and share the podcast. Tell your friends to tell their friends and family. If they want to hear about Steelers news and coverage, come check out Still Current Network. With that being said, Shannon, take us out.